restoring control of our fishing grounds will be one of the really huge gains for the UK. Way back, 2005, having been all around the coasts of the UK and been to Norway, Faroes, Iceland, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, east coast of the States and the Falklands, I wrote a green paper on how you'd run a sane fisheries policy. And that was the paper on which we fought the 2005 election, because we said we would restore control, because the common fisheries policy is a biological, environmental, economic and social disaster which cannot be reformed. No other fisheries is run in such an insanely bad manner. No other part of the world throws back 1 million tonnes of healthy fish back into the sea, dead as pollution. So we will restore complete total control of the EEZ, which is 200 miles off the median line in places like the Channel, and we will control everything within it. We will then be able to introduce sane fisheries techniques, which work in countries all over the world, work much more modern techniques than the EU allows. And we will then behave like a normal, independent, maritime nation and do reciprocal deals, if it suits us, with our neighbours, exactly as Norway do, exactly as Iceland do. And what we will see is our marine environment massively improved very quickly, because one of the key things in my paper was closed areas to allow stocks to recover. We would see huge investment very rapidly, because this is a potentially very profitable industry. And we would see jobs come back to some of our most remote, deprived coastal communities. And we can export. Very interesting recently, we've seen some shellfish products from the southwest getting pretty miserable prices in Belgium and France. People got on aeroplanes, they've been to Asia, they've massively increased exports to Asia, and they have doubled prices. So I'm really optimistic for the prospects for fisheries, but we have got to take back complete, total control. There must be absolutely no repeating the mistakes of the 1970s, where allocation of fish stocks and resources got snarled up in negotiation. Negotiation is very black and very white. We will take back full control of our entire EEZ. We will run it sanely and will behave like civilized neighbours in a reciprocal manner. Well, it is quite ridiculous that every time you discuss a trade deal with the largest economy in the world and growing faster than all the other major economies, goes straight down the electric wire to chlorinated chicken. I mean, having represented a very rural seat with big agricultural and food interests for 22 years, having done DEFRA and done a lot of probably more trade expeditions than any other previous Secretary of State, I am very, very clean that we have a successful agriculture and food industry. If you add it up, food and drink manufacturing is larger than all the other manufacturing industries put together. It is huge. It's much bigger than cars or aerospace, etc. But we should go on outcomes. What we should look at are the outcomes. And when you go to American chicken, you find that British consumers go to Manchester Airport, they get on an airplane, they go to Florida, they have a lovely time, and they will eat a lot of chicken, and they come back sane and healthy. Because it's the outcomes that count. Americans actually eat about twice the volume of chicken as Europeans do. But we have more cases of Campylobacter, which is a killer, and Salmonella in Europe than the Americans. So we should learn from them. Having talked to them, very few products actually use chlorine. They use things like paracetic acid. But we have chlorine in our water. We have salad washed with chlorine. We use chlorine in fish. We allow our children to swim in chlorinated swimming pools. So on this, I would just ask everyone to calm down and look at outcomes. Look at the outcomes. That is what we should base it on. How we arrive at those outcomes is down to the country concerned. And this is where I always fell out with the Europeans, because they're building a new state, they want uniformity of government. So they're very interested in the manner at which you arrive at something is uniform. They were less interested in the outcome. Well, the precautionary principle, when you read it in the directive, makes total sense. No one would disagree with a word of it. But it's the manner in which it's implemented which has been catastrophic. And I've used the phrase many times, because of the European Union's insane hostility to modern technologies, The European Union is becoming the museum of world farming. So if you take a very vexed issue which cropped up in my time, which is the use of neonicotinoids, I had 85,000 emails to my parliamentary account here. I had allies in Europe on neonics. We had the Hungarians, for instance, that had 2 million hectares under neonics for 3 crops, and had a very big honey industry, produced 20,000 tons of honey. Anyway, neonics were banned. What's happened here? We've seen our plantings of rapeseed, for instance, go down by about 70%. We've seen farmers forced to use horrible things like pyrethroids, really nasty, old-fashioned chemicals, which do real damage to the marine environment or the aquatic environment. And worse, become less and less effective as the bugs become immune. In the meantime, we've imported 1 million tons of rapeseed from other countries, including the Ukraine, where we imported 95,000 tons last year, where they have neonicotinoids and they have the highest honey production in the world per head. So this is all a complete nonsense. You need to balance the precautionary principle and the manner in which you implement it with the innovation principle. We should be constantly looking to innovate, to bring in better technologies which will produce more food on less land and provide a better environment. There are always, nearly always, better environmental outcomes if you use modern technologies. So you need a balance. I think just whenever you're in doubt, go back to the referendum and the general election, which was take back control. If in doubt, if it means that something's going to happen which we do not have complete control by elected politicians who stand or fall by their record in general elections, and if they pass good laws, get re-elected, if they pass bad laws or raise taxes and spend the money badly, get chucked out. That's the principle on which they should go on. So it's reference to the European Court of Justice, it's alignment of regulations where we don't have control. Absolutely not. Keep going back to that very simple principle, which came up in the on referendum day. People came up to me, came off a building site on referendum day, covered in dust. And these guys said to me, saw me with my Vote Leave badges on, said, Mr. Paterson, it's about them, isn't it? It's all about them. I said, yeah, what do you mean? It's about them. We can get rid of you. We could vote you out if we wanted to. We can't get rid of them. And, Mr. Paterson, very important, you have to do what they tell you. You in Parliament can't do anything about them. And that's what this is all about. We now have 11 months now to establish the way we go ahead and to really take back control. There's going to be a huge amount of work to be done. We've already talked about fisheries, agriculture, and we need to get back to also the really fundamental battle here, which is being consumers and producers. There are huge gains to consumers if we allow them access to products from all over the world at world prices. That will force the European Union in the talks to recognise that if they don't match world prices and quality, then that monster 94 billion surplus in goods will shrink. So at every stage in these negotiations, we should be thinking about UK consumers and giving them the power, because that's what this ultimate battle has all been about. It's about democracy and the right of consumers to buy as they like around the world. So there's a huge amount of work to be done. This is a global issue. We have a wonderful opportunity to do trade deals, not just with Europe, but very importantly, rapidly with the United States, with Japan and Asia. We can retake our seat, not just on the World Trade Organization, but on the bodies which I was involved in, the OIE, which does World Animal Health, IPPC, which does plant health, Codex Alimentarius, which does food standards. We will take a full seat on these bodies now. We will have allies. We'll be able to work with them. We'll put down amendments. We'll get regulation at world level changed. And we can reach out to all these countries where we have historic links. You know, look at the potential in India on whiskey, for instance, the opportunities in India. If we gave the Indians access here to some of their agricultural products, which we can't produce, they have an extraordinary demand for quality Scotch whiskey. to the extent that if we got the duties really down, when I was doing DEFRA, we didn't think there was enough distilling capacity in the whole of Scotland to supply quality drinkers in India. So I'm massively optimistic, but there's a huge amount of work to be done. And Global Vision will be a really key platform in making those arguments, because there will be some nitty-gritty stuff, there will be disagreements, there will be calls for botched compromises, and it's very important we have a platform on which that vision is clear. Total restoration of democracy, so that people vote for politicians who actually decide and make their laws, and total support for consumers, so they have access to the very best products right around the world at world prices. And no nonsense about customs and tariff wars and all this stuff which we've had to live with for the last sad decades. So I'm very optimistic, but Global Vision has a real role to play in coming months.